Good evening and welcome. Tonight, we are stepping into a world that most people will never see, not because it is imaginary, but because access is deliberately denied. Across our planet exist places so heavily guarded, so carefully concealed, that even their purposes are often unclear. These are not destinations you can book, photograph, or explore freely. They are locations defined by restriction, silence, and unanswered questions. Some of these places lie deep beneath mountains, carved into solid rock with layers of steel and concrete. Others exist in plain sight towns, islands, or buildings that appear ordinary at first glance, yet are sealed off by law, military force, or extreme environmental danger. A few are protected not by soldiers or fences, but by nature itself, where heat, pressure, or isolation makes human presence nearly impossible. Officially, many of these sites exist for practical reasons: national defense, scientific research, historical preservation, or global security. Governments speak of safety measures, classified research, and strategic necessity. Scientists point to fragile ecosystems or environments too dangerous to enter. Historians explain that certain records must be preserved, not exposed. And yet, despite these explanations, something about these places continues to unsettle us. Because secrecy has a way of creating stories. When access is denied and information is limited, imagination fills the gaps. Rumors grow. Theories multiply. Questions linger. What is being protected? Who decides who gets access? And why do some locations remain closed for decades, even centuries, long after their original purpose is said to have passed? Throughout history, power has often been hidden not just behind walls, but behind silence. The more restricted a place becomes, the more symbolic it feels. A sealed door suggests importance. A guarded boundary implies consequence. And a location that cannot be visited begins to take on a life of its own, existing somewhere between fact and mystery. Tonight, we will explore some of the most guarded places on Earth. Not to break their secrecy, but to understand why it exists. We will move from underground complexes to closed cities, from fortified islands to natural environments that quietly reject human intrusion. Along the way, we will see how fear, power, preservation, and curiosity all play a role in shaping these forbidden spaces. So wherever you are right now, settle in. You do not need a map, clearance, or permission, only curiosity. Let us begin our journey into the world's most guarded places. And the reasons they remain just out of reach. Rising quietly from the forests of the Ural Mountains, Mount Yamantau looks, at first glance, unremarkable. It is not the tallest peak in the region, nor is it marked by dramatic cliffs or famous landmarks. To an ordinary observer, it appears to be just another remote mountain in a vast and sparsely populated landscape. But beneath its rocky slopes, many believe something far more significant may be hidden. For decades, Mount Yamantau has been one of the most closely guarded locations in Russia. Satellite images have revealed signs of extensive excavation, tunnel entrances carved into the mountain, large construction zones, new rail lines, and roads leading into areas that are otherwise inaccessible. These discoveries caught the attention of foreign intelligence agencies during the Cold War, and the curiosity never faded. What makes Yamantau especially puzzling is not just the scale of the activity, but the explanations offered for it. Over the years, Russian officials have described the site as everything from a mining operation to a food storage facility, even a secure archive for cultural treasures. Yet none of these explanations seem to justify the intense military presence, restricted airspace, and near total secrecy surrounding the mountain. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a time when Russia faced serious economic hardship, construction at Yamantau reportedly continued. To outside observers, this raised an obvious question: why would a struggling nation invest enormous resources into a single mountain unless it served a critical purpose? The most common theory is that Yamantau houses a massive underground bunker, designed to protect government leadership in the event of a catastrophic crisis. Some analysts believe it could function as a continuity of government facility, capable of supporting thousands of people for extended periods of time. If true, it would be less like a shelter and more like a hidden underground city, complete with power systems, water supplies, and command centers. Others suggest the mountain could be used for highly sensitive research or strategic storage, shielded by layers of rock that naturally block detection. Whatever its true role, what stands out most is how little has ever leaked. No confirmed photographs from inside. No detailed public accounts. No clear acknowledgement of its function. In an age of constant surveillance and information flow, Mount Yamantau remains stubbornly silent. And that silence is precisely what keeps it at the center of speculation, a reminder that some secrets are still buried deep enough to endure. At the heart of Vatican City, beneath grand halls and centuries-old stone, lies one of the most restricted collections of documents on Earth. Officially known today as the Vatican Apostolic Archives, this vast repository has long been famous under its former name, the Vatican Secret Archives. And while the word secret originally meant private, its modern meaning has fueled curiosity for generations. Stretching for more than 50 miles of shelving, the archives contain documents spanning over 1,000 years of recorded history. Papal correspondence, diplomatic treaties, financial records, trial transcripts, and letters from kings, queens, artists, and revolutionaries all rest quietly in climate-controlled vaults. Some of the world's most pivotal moments were documented here, written in ink that has survived wars, collapses of empires, and the passage of time itself. For centuries, access to these archives was completely forbidden to outsiders. Only in the late 19th century did the Vatican begin allowing limited scholarly access, and even today, the rules remain strict. Researchers must be vetted, approved, and restricted to specific documents. They cannot wander freely, photograph materials, or view large portions of the collection. Most of the archives remain closed, unseen by the modern world. This level of restriction has naturally led to speculation. If the archives are simply historical records, many ask, why not open them more fully? Why maintain armed security, controlled requests, and strict supervision? These questions have given rise to countless theories suggesting the presence of suppressed writings, lost religious texts, or documents that could challenge long-held historical narratives. Popular culture has amplified this mystery. Novels, films, and documentaries have portrayed the archives as a vault of forbidden knowledge, filled with secrets capable of reshaping humanity's understanding of religion and power. Yet scholars who have gained access often describe something more understated: endless shelves of administrative documents, legal records, and correspondence that reflect the everyday workings of a global institution. Still, even ordinary records carry weight. A single letter can change how history is interpreted. A forgotten report can alter the understanding of an era. And with so much material remaining untouched, the possibility that something unexpected lies hidden continues to capture the imagination. The Vatican maintains that its restrictions exist to preserve fragile documents and prevent misinterpretation or damage. Ancient parchment and ink cannot withstand constant handling. From this perspective, secrecy is not about concealment but protection. Yet the paradox remains. The more tightly something is guarded, the more powerful it seems. And so the Vatican secret archives endure as both a historical treasure and a symbol not of hidden truths necessarily, but of how secrecy itself shapes belief, curiosity, and myth. Not all guarded places hide underground or behind ancient walls. Some exist in plain sight, entire towns that appear ordinary on maps and satellite images, yet remain completely closed to the outside world. Missouri, located in Russia's Ural Mountains, is one of the most striking examples of this quiet form of secrecy. From above, Missouri looks like a typical small city. Rows of apartment buildings, roads, schools, and public facilities are clearly visible. But unlike normal towns, Missouri is sealed off. Entry is restricted, movement is monitored, and even Russian citizens require special permission to visit. There are no tourist signs, no open roads welcoming visitors, and no casual explanations offered for its existence. The city was established during the Soviet era, a time when closed cities were common across the country. These settlements were built to support sensitive industries such as nuclear research, weapons development, or strategic infrastructure. Missouri is widely believed to serve a similar role, closely linked to the mysterious activities beneath nearby Mount Umontau. Its residents are not random civilians. Most are thought to be military personnel, engineers, technicians, and their families, people whose work supports a classified facility. Life inside the city is structured around silence. Neighbors may live side by side for years without knowing the full details of each other's jobs. Questions are discouraged, and discretion is expected. What makes Missouri especially unusual is its persistence. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, many closed cities were opened or downgraded as their original purposes faded. Missouri, however, remained sealed. Decades later, it is still active, guarded, and officially unexplained. This ongoing closure suggests that whatever it supports remains important. You do not maintain an entire city with housing, schools, healthcare, and infrastructure unless there is something essential to protect. In this sense, Missouri may be even more revealing than the mountain it serves. While Mount Umontau hides its secrets underground, Missouri shows what secrecy looks like on the surface, ordinary life lived under extraordinary restrictions. The existence of such a city challenges the assumption that secrecy must be hidden far away. Sometimes, it takes the form of normal streets, familiar routines, and quiet neighborhoods all built around something no one is meant to talk about. Missouri stands as a reminder that the most guarded places are not always empty or abandoned. Some are alive, inhabited, and functioning, their greatest defense not walls or weapons, but silence. In the high desert of northern New Mexico sits a small town that, on the surface, seems entirely ordinary. Dulce has a gas station, quiet streets, and fewer than a few thousand residents. Yet for decades, this unassuming place has occupied a unique position in modern folklore, becoming one of the most talked about locations in conspiracy culture. Unlike the guarded mountains and fortified bases explored earlier, Dulce's mystery is not confirmed by fences or official statements. Instead, it exists in stories, sightings, and unanswered questions that refuse to fade away. The legends surrounding Dulce suggest the presence of a hidden underground facility beneath nearby Archuleta Mesa, a base rumored to be involved in secret experiments and unexplained activity. The stories began to take shape in the late 1970s and early 1980s, when local ranchers reported a strange pattern of livestock deaths. Animals were found with precise wounds and missing organs, with no clear signs of predators or struggle. While scientists and authorities offered natural explanations, many locals remained unconvinced. Around the same time, reports of unusual lights in the night sky became more frequent, further fueling speculation. One of the most influential figures in spreading the Dulce story was an electronics specialist who believed he was intercepting unusual signals from the area. He became convinced these transmissions originated from an underground installation and shared his conclusions publicly. Over time, his claims grew more elaborate, describing multiple underground levels and secret operations. While his credibility was later questioned, the ideas he introduced took on a life of their own. As the years passed, others added their voices. Former law enforcement officials spoke cautiously about unexplained sightings. Travelers reported seeing unmarked aircraft or helicopters behaving in unusual ways. None of these accounts could be independently verified, yet together they formed a web of stories that kept the legend alive. What makes Dulce particularly fascinating is not whether the rumors are true, but why they persist. The region is remote, sparsely populated, and rich in cultural traditions that include stories of sky beings and hidden worlds. Combined with Cold War secrecy and limited public information about military activities, the environment was fertile ground for speculation. In this way, Dulce represents a different kind of guarded place. Not one protected by armed patrols, but by uncertainty. The absence of clear answers allows imagination to fill the gaps. Over time, rumor hardens into belief, and belief becomes legend. Dulce reminds us that secrecy does not always require walls or guards. Sometimes, all it takes is silence, distance, and just enough unexplained detail to ensure that questions never fully disappear. In the vast red desert near Alice Springs, far from major cities and coastlines, sits a facility that looks strangely out of place. From the air, Pine Gap appears as a cluster of smooth white domes scattered across the landscape, resembling oversized golf balls resting in the sand. Officially, it is a joint operation between Australia and the United States. Unofficially, it is often described as one of the most important intelligence sites on the planet. Pine Gap was established in the 1960s during the height of the Cold War, at a time when global powers were racing to monitor each other's movements from space. Its remote location was carefully chosen. The dry climate, minimal radio interference, and isolation made it ideal for tracking satellites and intercepting signals from across large portions of the world. Those white domes are not decorative. They conceal powerful satellite dishes designed to receive, relay, and analyze vast streams of data. Over the decades, Pine Gap has grown into a central node in global intelligence gathering. It plays a role in monitoring missile launches, tracking military activity, supporting drone operations, and collecting communication signals as part of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. Despite its strategic importance, very little about Pine Gap's daily operations is publicly discussed. The airspace above it is restricted. The perimeter is heavily guarded. Journalists and civilians are stopped long before they can get close. Even many Australian officials have admitted that they are not fully briefed on everything that happens inside the base. This lack of transparency has fueled speculation for years. Some former workers have claimed that Pine Gap extends underground, with secure levels beneath the desert floor housing data centers and protected facilities. Others have gone further, linking the base to theories involving experimental technology or unexplained aerial sightings reported in the surrounding region. There have also been protests. During periods of international conflict, activists argued that Pine Gap's role in surveillance and targeting made Australia a potential focus in global tensions. These concerns intensified after document leaks in the 2010s revealed just how extensive global data collection had become, confirming that Pine Gap was far more influential than many had realized. Yet what makes Pine Gap truly compelling is not speculation, but contrast. On the surface, it is quiet and almost mundane, set against endless desert and blue sky. Beneath that calm exterior, however, flows an invisible stream of information signals, movements, and communications from across the globe. Pine Gap shows how modern secrecy has evolved. The most guarded places are no longer just bunkers and vaults. They are listening posts, data hubs, and silent observers. And while nothing dramatic may appear to happen there, the power it represents is immense: the power to see without being seen, and to know without being known. In the middle of the Indian Ocean lies a ring of white sand, palm trees, and turquoise water that looks like a tropical paradise from above. Diego Garcia appears untouched, peaceful, and remote. But despite its beauty, it is one of the most restricted places on Earth, an island that civilians cannot visit, photograph freely, or explore. Diego Garcia is not a tourist destination. It is a strategic military base operated by the United States and the United Kingdom, chosen for one simple reason: location. Positioned between Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, The island serves as a crucial hub for projecting military reach across vast distances. From here, aircraft and naval forces can operate far from mainland borders, largely unseen and uninterrupted. Before it became a base, Diego Garcia was home to the Chagosian people, a small community that had lived on the island for generations. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, they were relocated so the island could be cleared for military use. This decision remains deeply controversial and continues to shape how the island is viewed today. Once construction began, Diego Garcia transformed into a self-contained fortress. The surrounding waters are patrolled. Airspace is restricted. Entry requires high-level clearance, and journalists are rarely allowed beyond carefully guided routes. Even when access is granted, only limited areas are shown. Over the decades, the base has played a role in major global conflicts, serving as a launch point for long-range operations and surveillance missions. Official statements describe its function in broad, carefully chosen terms, emphasizing defense cooperation and regional stability. As with many sealed locations, secrecy has encouraged speculation. Human rights organizations have raised questions about the island's possible use during the early years of the global war on terror. Others have linked it to aviation mysteries or hidden facilities beneath the island's surface. While governments have acknowledged some limited roles, much about Diego Garcia remains unconfirmed. What makes Diego Garcia especially striking is its contrast. It is both breathtaking and inaccessible. A place of natural beauty transformed into a symbol of modern military power. Soldiers live and work where no civilian communities exist, surrounded by ocean and silence. Diego Garcia reminds us that the most guarded places are not always hidden in darkness or underground. Some lie in open sunlight, ringed by coral reefs and blue water, while their true purpose remains locked behind restricted access and unanswered questions. Hidden within the quiet countryside of southern England lies a facility that has operated in near silence for more than a century. Portone Down does not look dramatic from the outside. There are no towering walls or obvious signs of its significance, yet behind its fences and controlled laboratories is one of the United Kingdom's most sensitive research centers. Portone Down was established during the First World War, when chemical weapons first changed the nature of modern conflict. Britain needed a place to study how such threats worked and how to defend against them. What began as a wartime necessity evolved into a permanent institution focused on chemical and biological protection. Over the decades, Portone Down expanded into a complex of laboratories designed to study some of the most dangerous substances known to science. Officially, its mission has always been defensive, developing detection methods, protective equipment, and medical responses to hazardous agents. Its work today is described as essential for national safety, counter-terrorism, and public health preparedness. However, secrecy has long surrounded the site, and that secrecy has carried a heavy cost. Historical records later revealed that human trials were conducted during the mid-20th century, often involving military volunteers who were not fully informed of the risks. Some suffered long-term health effects, and in at least one case, a participant lost his life. These revelations led to public inquiries decades later and permanently shaped the facility's reputation. Portone Down returned to global attention in the 21st century during high-profile international incidents involving toxic substances. Scientists from the facility played a key role in identifying rare nerve agents, placing the site briefly in the global spotlight. Yet even then, most of its operations remained hidden from public view. Security at Portone Down reflects the danger of its work. Entry is tightly controlled. Airspace is restricted. Laboratories operate behind multiple layers of containment, where even small mistakes could have serious consequences. Researchers work under strict protocols, aware that the substances they study cannot be treated casually. For nearby communities, Portone Down exists as a quiet neighbor, rarely discussed but always present. For the wider public, it remains a symbol of the uneasy balance between protection and secrecy. Necessary research conducted behind closed doors, carrying the weight of past mistakes and modern responsibility. Toned down shows that not all guarded places are built to hide power or wealth. Some are sealed because what lies inside is simply too dangerous to leave unprotected and too complex to fully explain. Not all forbidden places are protected by soldiers, fences, or laws. Some are sealed away by forces far older and far more powerful than any government. Deep beneath the desert of northern Mexico lies one such place, the Cave of the Crystals. Discovered by chance in the early 2000s during mining operations, the cave revealed a scene that looked almost unreal. Enormous crystal formations stretched across the chamber, some reaching the length of a city bus and weighing tens of tons. The space felt less like a cave and more like a cathedral shaped by geology rather than human hands. But this beauty came with a price. The environment inside the cave is among the most hostile ever encountered by humans. Temperatures soar to extreme levels and humidity approaches saturation, creating conditions where the human body cannot cool itself. Without specialized equipment, survival is measured in minutes. Even with protective suits and oxygen systems, scientists could only remain inside briefly. Visits were carefully timed, monitored, and limited. The cave did not need guards. Nature itself enforced the boundary. Because of these conditions, access to the Cave of the Crystals has always been extremely restricted. Tourists were never allowed. Only a small number of researchers were permitted to enter, and even they understood that prolonged exposure could be fatal. Eventually, the cave was sealed again as groundwater returned, preserving the crystals in their natural environment. This place challenged assumptions about what makes a location unreachable. No secrecy laws were required. No warnings were necessary. The environment alone made clear that humans did not belong there. Yet the cave also sparked wonder beyond geology. Scientists discovered microbial life trapped inside fluid pockets within the crystals, organisms that may have survived in isolation for tens of thousands of years. This finding raised questions about life in extreme environments, not only on Earth, but potentially elsewhere in the universe. The Cave of the Crystals stands apart from other guarded places because it reminds us that the planet itself still holds boundaries we cannot cross. In an age of satellites, maps, and exploration, there are still spaces that resist us completely. Some places are not forbidden by decision, they are forbidden by design. When we step back and look at all these places together, a pattern begins to emerge. Whether hidden beneath mountains, sealed behind guarded borders, locked inside archives, or protected by extreme natural conditions, the most guarded places on Earth share something in common. They exist at the boundary between what we are allowed to know and what we are not. Secrecy does more than protect physical locations. It shapes perception. A closed door suggests importance. Restricted access implies consequence. Over time, a lack of information becomes a story of its own. The less we are told, the more meaning we assign to what remains hidden. Some of these places are guarded out of necessity. Dangerous substances must be contained. Fragile environments must be preserved. Strategic systems must be protected to maintain stability. In these cases, secrecy is practical and deliberate, not designed to deceive, but to prevent harm. Others are sealed because of power. Governments protect continuity, intelligence, and influence by limiting access and controlling narratives. History, when locked away, becomes curated. Knowledge, when restricted, becomes authority. These locations remind us that control over information is often as important as control over territory. And then there are places where secrecy is less intentional, shaped instead by time, distance, or environment. Natural barriers, remote landscapes, and extreme conditions become guardians themselves. In those cases, mystery is not enforced, it simply exists. What keeps these places fascinating is not necessarily what they contain, but what they represent. They challenge the modern assumption that everything can be seen, mapped, or explained. They suggest that even in an age of constant exposure, some parts of our world remain beyond reach. In the end, the most guarded places are mirrors. They reflect our fears, our curiosity, and our need for certainty in an uncertain world. They remind us that mystery is not a failure of knowledge, but a feature of it. And perhaps that is why these places continue to draw our attention. Not because we expect to uncover every secret, but because knowing that some doors remain closed makes the world feel larger and far more interesting. As we come to the end of our journey, one thing becomes clear. The most guarded places on Earth are not defined only by walls, soldiers, or restricted borders. They are defined by silence, by absence, by the unanswered questions that linger long after we look away. Some of these places were built to protect nations, others to preserve history, science, or life itself. A few are guarded simply because the world is not meant to enter them. Yet all of them remind us of the same truth, that even in a time of constant connection, not everything is meant to be seen, explained, or understood. Perhaps that is why these places stay with us. They represent the limits of access, the edges of knowledge, and the quiet power of secrecy. They remind us that mystery still exists, not in distant myths, but right here on our planet, hidden behind mountains, oceans, documents, and stone. And maybe that is okay. Not every door needs to be opened. Not every answer needs to be known. Sometimes, the unknown itself is what keeps our curiosity alive. Thank you for spending this time with me. Whether you were listening closely or letting this story play softly in the background, I am grateful you were here. If you enjoyed this journey, feel free to stay curious, explore gently, and join us again for another quiet story from the edges of history. Until next time, take care. And rest well. Crescent Moon.